And now to the growing acceptance of legalized marijuana across the country. Nearly half of Americans now have access to legally purchased marijuana in their home states. And as prominent Democrats are calling for it to be legalized nationwide by next year, some states and communities are hoping that pot, once considered a gateway drug, could now become a gateway for economic and racial justice. Here's ABC's Alex Perche.
This is Linda Green's bread and butter, Anacostia Organics. It's an idea born over dinner.
With some close girlfriends one night, someone mentioned that D.C. had legalized cannabis. And we all looked at each other because we're all in the same age group and products of the 60s and said, we should go in that business.
Well, Linda, a longtime community organizer in the nation's capital, saw an opportunity to open a marijuana dispensary in one of the city's chronically poverty-stricken areas.
This is not a stoner industry. It's been misconceived. It's not a stoner industry. It's an industry of healing.
Linda is one of more than 320,000 Americans who work in the cannabis industry. Recreational use of pot is currently legal in 17 states and D.C. Sales in 2020 reached more than $17.5 billion. An incredible boom for an industry during a pandemic. And all of this despite the federal prohibition.
The bill is passed.
The U.S. House recently passed one of a handful of bills currently working its way through Congress that would strengthen the industry. The SAFE Act would make it easier for cannabis companies to do business in states where sales are legal.
It's time for change. I believe the time has come to end the federal prohibition on marijuana in this country.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, speaking on 420, said the time is right for action on legalization.
Not only to end the federal prohibition on marijuana, but to ensure restorative justice, protect public health, and implement responsible taxes and regulations.
But is the Biden White House ready for it?
At the federal level, he supports decriminalizing marijuana use and automatically expunging any prior criminal records. He also supports legalizing medicinal marijuana. So that's his point of view on the issue.
But that's not full legalization, and data shows that's what most Americans want. A recent Pew Research Center poll shows 91% of those surveyed say marijuana should be legal. And of those respondents, 3 in 5 say cannabis should be legal for both medicinal and recreational use. Less than 10% believe pot should remain criminalized across the board. Looking at the current Congress and the current administration, do you feel as though that there is a clock, there is a window in order to get this through?
I think there is a window of opportunity right now that maybe won't exist in a year.
Andrew Friedman was Colorado's so-called cannabis czar.
I was the governor's director of marijuana coordination.
He created the framework for the first legal pot market in the country and has seen the industry grow from the start. Since 2014, marijuana has made over $10 billion in sales for the state. That's generated more than $400 million in tax revenue used to fund state school-related projects. It seems as though getting to a point where it's about breaking through the taboo. Where do you think we stand in terms of that mindset?
Yeah, so, if you go to Colorado right now and you have a conversation about cannabis, it's the most normal thing in the world, right? It stands right alongside alcohol. It stands right alongside the Denver Broncos as just a thing to have a conversation about.
Andrew now runs the Coalition for Cannabis Policy Education and Regulation, a think tank that includes big tobacco, big beer, security companies, and others who have a stake in the cannabis industry. What's the strategy going forward?
So our strategy is really to stop focusing on if legalization should go forward, recognizing that legalization has gone forward. It's a reality for almost half of America.
It's here.
It's here. And we really need to start talking about how rather than if legalization is a good idea.
And the most recent state to legalize marijuana? Virginia. This is tobacco country, part of the Bible Belt. The Commonwealth, now the first to legalize recreational use in the South. It happened just last month when Governor Northam signed the law.
This is the latest step we are taking toward building a more equitable and just Virginia.
And while you won't be able to sell drugs legally for 3 years, the governor pushed for the legislature to speed up the timetable for legalization of simple possession to limit drug arrests. According to the ACLU, Black Americans are nearly 4 times more likely than white Americans to be arrested for marijuana possession despite similar usage rates. Governor Northam says that he's going to end the disparate treatment of people of color. I understand that this happening in Virginia is personal to you.
Oh, it's personal. I was on 95 in Virginia when I was pulled over and arrested for cannabis possession. Born and raised in Virginia, I, didn't think that would happen to me.
Shanita Penny was charged with possession a decade ago. And it was that simple traffic stop that cost her nearly $3,500 to expunge her record.
So it's a difficult process for someone who's pretty reasonably, resourced, but for someone who's not, this becomes a game changer in the worst way.
Despite her run-in with the law, Shanita went on to rise to the top of her profession and work with Fortune 500 companies as a consultant.
As the president of MCBA.
And today, using her skills in compliance and business development, the one thing that could have ruined Shanita's life is now driving her way of life.
It lit a fire under me to make legalization happen in a way that people who were not interested in consuming this plant or being a part of this industry, that they would fully understand why legalization is so important and how equitable legalization can impact your life, whether you're, again, touching this plant or not.
Shanita says she believes her encounter with the law is an example of the staggering racial bias in policing minorities for possession. And as states start to decriminalize and legalize, the movement is turning towards using marijuana laws as a gateway to justice. Why was it so important to start with decriminalization of simple possession?
We had to understand that if the legislation was truly going to prioritize racial equity and the harm that's been done, that we needed to stop the harm as soon as possible.
And advocates say that growing revenue stream for states is being used as a possible source for racial equity and economic opportunity. From drug laws that were historically used to imprison populations of color to now laws that could help fund renewal.
A lot of the conversation now is how do you make sure that the economic opportunities available are there for the communities most harmed by the war on drugs?
One idea, reparations.
This is a historic vote.
In March, the town of Evanston, Illinois passed a resolution where tax revenue from pot sales will be used to help its black residents who faced historic unfair housing practices. $10 million total over 10 years to be used on home repairs or down payments.
We have a lot of hopes on the commercial market here, particularly in Virginia, but it is going to be a hard push to truly make that equitable. And we would like to really say that this is a first step forward. This is a progressive step forward.
Virginia's law includes something called the Cannabis Equity Reinvestment Fund. 30% of tax revenue raised goes towards helping communities historically over-policed for marijuana crimes. And for Linda Green, there's a reinvestment of sorts as well.
One of the things that I did was I opened my dispensary in the community in which I live.
Linda's workers come from her Anacostia neighborhood. She says she teaches them the ins and outs of the industry so that one day this little green plant can be used not only to heal the sick, but also her community. Alex Berchet, ABC News, Washington.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.